So we are moving ahead with the next session on storytelling for business by Ms. Kanika Tewari, CEO at Go Diverse. Can we have a big round of applause for Ms. Kanika? Kanika is a leadership coach, consultant and researcher who has worked on projects in US, Europe, Japan, Korea, Africa, China, Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore, Sri Lanka, and Southeast Asia. She is a visiting faculty at leading business schools, MDI, IIFT, IMI, 4IIM, Raipur School, and others. She expertise in areas of situational leadership, managerial effectiveness, growth mindset, executive group coaching, feedback, different styles of management and storytelling. Kanika mentors young women globally with Sherry Blair Foundation. She is a co-founder of Destination Boardroom, an executive leadership program for women leaders. Kanika is a triathlete, a certified scuba diver, and a state-level table tennis player. She is an adventure enthusiast, an avid cyclist, and covers along distance trails and tracks. She is married and lives in Mumbai with her husband and son. Over to you, ma'am.
Can we have the slides up? Hello, hi. Can you hear me? I realized that collar mics are not meant for ladies who wear saris. So on that note, let's get started. My name is Kanika Tewari. I have 25 minutes with me. And these next 25 minutes, I want to take you, only if the slides allow me, because it's not going forward. Can I invite somebody to help me take the slides forward? And can we put the timer to 25? Okay, so over the next 25 minutes, I'm going to take you through helping you understand the difference between a narrative and a story. Are you with me? Okay, before I get there, let's talk about who am I. So for the largest part of my life, I have been in sales, and I very proudly call myself a sales girl. So year is 2007, I used to work for a healthcare company, and I used to sell large equipment sales. So there was a time in 2007 when I was traveling by the UP Roadways bus between Lucknow and Banaras. तो रात को जब 11:30 बजे जो बस last stop लेती है, we were standing at the dhaba. I was sitting at a chapoi, right? So the dhaba owner came to me. I was a young petite girl. He came and kept his hand on my shoulder. And then this is what he said. He said, बेटा एक बात बताओ, घर में पैसे की कोई किल्लत है? कोई कमी चल रही है पैसे की? रात को यूपी रोडवेज के बस में तुम इस ढाबे पे कर क्या रही हो? Then there was the bus driver who was on the next charpoy eating paranthas. And then he told him कि सुनो रुकना, जाना नहीं, अभी मैं वापस आता हूँ. And for a moment I was like, करने क्या वाला है? मतलब गुंडे बुला रहा है, पुलिस बुला रहा है, मतलब what is he going to do next? Limpingly he went to his cottage, and when he came back with a black smelly shawl. And he told me this. He said, एक लंबा सा घूंघट काढ़ो और बनारस पहुंचने से पहले उतारना नहीं. And then he told the conductor of the bus कि बिटिया को पीछे वाली सीट देना और कोने वाली. Now why am I telling you this story? I'm telling you the story because I hope this helps you realize कि मुझसे ज़्यादा obedient इंसान आपको मिल नहीं सकता और मुझसे ज़्यादा resilient और कोई हो नहीं सकता. Because that's the journey that possibly I've made from that dhaba there to standing in front of an August gathering, which is all of you today. So let me take this conversation forward. What you see on the stage right now, if you ever go to Egypt and you go to the Pyramid of Giza and you go to the little tombs where the pharaohs who are the kings and the queens are actually buried and mummified, these paintings carve out the entire arena there. Closer to home as well, if you go to some of the places in India, you would see what we call our cave paintings. So this is telling me that cave paintings, which was the format of pantomiming and pointing, has existed even before verbal word came into existence. And that's why maybe storytelling is the oldest form of communication even before the verbal dialect actually came into being. I have some questions on the screen And I'm going to invite you to tell me whether you think they are true or they are false. Now, I can be a very tall and a broad person. If I'm blocking the view, please feel free to tell me. So, here's the first one for you. It says storytelling is an ancient art that hasn't changed much in several years. True or false? Okay. Ready for the next? Okay. The next one. The effective use of storytelling in organization involves crafting and performing a well-made story with a hero and a heroine, a plot, and a turning point and a resolution. True or false? False, true, mixed audience. A compelling, well-made story is effective regardless for the purpose for which the story is being told. True or false? Okay. And the last one I have for you is storytelling is a rare skill in which relatively few human beings excel. True or false? Ladies and gentlemen and others, and the members of the jury on board, actually all of these are false. And if any one of you want to contest it, you may want to pay attention to the next 20 minutes being with me in the session today. Let's go forward. Now, when it comes to telling stories or narratives, there are two spectrums to it. There is the little s storytelling, and then there is the big S, right? Let me quickly tell you what these could possibly be. So little s storytelling is nothing but anecdotes, examples, recounts, and the large S storytelling is nothing but legends, fairy tale, epics, and heroes' journeys. In the business parlance of language used in corporates, where do you think we should be? Little s or big S? Little s or big S? यार डेमोक्रेसी में ना आंसर एक ही हो सकता है ना, मतलब लिटिल बिट ऑफ दिस एंड लिटिल बिट ऑफ दैट. यू साउंडिंग लाइक मी व्हेन आई गो शॉपिंग. ये भी ले लेती हूँ और ये भी ले लेती हूँ, राइट? ऐसा नहीं होता है, यू नो. सो गिव मी वन फाइनल आंसर. व्हाट इज द ग्रुप कोहॉर्ट सेइंग? So I'm sensing when it's business narrative, when you're making a presentation, going to your boss, and if you by chance begin by saying Mahabharata में ये लिखा है, he'll be like, come to the point, right? So in business parlance, we stick to little s's, which is more recounts, more anecdotes, where you tell people, yeah, in my previous organization, in 2006, this was happening, and this is what got us where we are today. Make sense? Let's go forward. Now, there are three words on the screen, and especially from the sense of selling a narrative, between the three words, which is context, content, and connect, if you as an audience had to choose the focus, which do you think will come first, which comes second, which comes third? So let's begin the first one. Which one, if you had to choose, would you put on the top for your focus for your narrative? बहुत ही divided audience जनता है हमारी. हमारी मत बटा हुआ है. हाँ, मतदान में जो भी चल रहा है, it's not coming to a fulcrum point. So I'm getting answers which are all throughout. You know, when I work with CEOs and when I work with business heads and unit heads, they often tell me this, Kanika, लोगों को ना storytelling सिखा दो, executive presence सिखा दो, teach them presentation. And I tell them, I can teach them storytelling, I can't teach them strategic storytelling. I can teach them how to sell a narrative, but I can't teach them strategic narrative. Because both of this depend on the connect, the context, and only then does actually comes the content. But परेशानी क्या है? Slides तो मैंने बनाई है, रात को जाके weekend पे, तो मैं तो सब डालूंगी, है ना? मैं data point भी डालूंगी. I'll put a pie chart also, I'll put a bar graph also, and then I will write it below that what the pie chart means, and then I'll put top labels also. क्योंकि मैंने इतना मेहनत किया, it has to go on the slide. So I'm going to reiterate this for you to say it's the connect, right? Then comes the context, and the last one is the content. With that thought in mind, let's go forward, and let me quickly decipher the difference between narrative and a story. See, a narrative is, so I'm going to give you a formula per se. The formula is as simple. It's almost like a pyramid. On the top is the story arc or the story umbrella. And then the narrative is what follows all behind, which is the data, the rational point, the arguments, the why, the how, and when. All of that is nothing but the narrative. The story connects to the heart. The narrative fills in the rationale for the story. वो क्या कहते हैं? दिल ही तो है, और एक दिल ही को तो समझाना है. एक बार दिल समझ गया, तो रजामंदी तो हम नैरेटिव और डेटा पॉइंट से ले ही आएंगे. The narrative is always future focused. The story is about the present and about the lessons we've learned from the past. With me? Let's go forward. You know, I often say this, that as the protagonist of my story, there are choices that I have made, and there are also non-choices. There are choices I have made, and then there are non-choices. The choices have explicitly made me who I am, and my non-choices have emergently made me who I am. With me? My choices have explicitly made me who I am. My non-choices have emergently made me the protagonist that I am. And there can be multiple flip stories to a protagonist, right? There can be the hero, the victim. There can also be the leader and the follower. If I go forward, you have the loner, the lover, the wanderer, the settler, the atheist, the believer. And then you also have creator, adapter, warrior, nurturer. And kahani ka pehlu koi bhi ho sakta hai. There are different sides of the coin. When I, Kanika, as an employee, when I would tell my story, and I come from a Fauji background, you know, Karami Shashan has been my philosophy of life. So I always used to believe that I am a great follower. Boss ne bola to ho jayega, right? And I wanted to always tell my company that I am a great adopter. I am connected to the ethos and values of the organization, and I'm with you. Fast forward to the 18th year of my existence in my career as a business founder today, my story is one of a creator. And I want my story to be one of a leader. And because I am telling the story, my narrative needs to change. वो क्या कहते हैं कि जब तक lion doesn't learn to tell their tale, the hunter will keep telling their tale. And because I am the lioness of my story and you are of yours, we need to find the narrative that I am going to be choosing. So is your narrative coming from choicefulness? Or is your narrative coming from choicelessness? आप hero भी हो सकते हो और victim भी. Choice is yours to take. Let's go forward. Now, let's bring this conversation back to business context. Now, NASA was very curious, and I'm sure all of you will also agree, that in organization, everything cannot be written down. Every SOP cannot be written down, right? Everything can't be put on the shared drive. So NASA was curious कि यार काम चल कैसे रहा है? Right? How is it that this generation of wealth of knowledge is getting passed on? So they did this beautiful study by a lady called Charlotte. She was a sociologist, and she did this research on ethnography in NASA. And they found out that there are 4 kinds of stories that are largely getting told at NASA. Number 1 story, a foundation story. How NASA came into being. This could also apply to you when you talk about how your department came into being, right? The second story that NASA is getting told are averted disaster stories. The third kind of story that get told at NASA are past triumphs. How did we take the man to moon and back? आज तो लड़ाई हो जाएगी, man को क्यों लगे, woman को क्यों नहीं लगे, उसके लिए एक अलग DI class हम बाद में करेंगे. I'm going to make this conversation completely gender agnostic, okay? And the last one is major changes that NASA has done. Now my question to you is that in your organization right now, which of the 4 do you think there is a better need for that being used more? Between the 4, which one do you think can be told a little bit more in your organization? Can I hear some words out? Major changes? You would like people to understand beautiful. Anything on that side? वहाँ का वास्तु थोड़ा ठीक करते हैं? पीछे का ठीक नहीं हो रहा है वास्तु? Major changes. Okay, so largely I'm sensing all of you are saying, but we're missing a very big one. You know, when new interns come in, when new tech team members come on board, it's sometimes imperative for us to share with them what's the foundation, not of the organization, but of the department, of what we do. This thing that you're saying is very tedious. What was the foundation? Why did it come into being? Because before you change it, you should know why it came in. Right? Let's go forward. I found this video offline. You can Google it and find it. See when you see the video, what really comes out for you.
So glad you guys could make it. So how was the safari?
Oh, it was amazing.
It was amazing. Well, I mean, did you see animals? Tell us. Was it? So many animals, right?
Yeah, so many animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, tell us more. I mean, don't let us hang him. Was it magical?
Was it like Culture Channel?
About the
Oh, right, yeah. So there was this one.
Yes.
It was an animal, right? And it just
Definitely.
would have taken your head off in
but
a
it was
second.
sweet. It was sweet.
Right, but man-eating.
Yeah, but it ended up not being. It was actually what it was. Oh, and then you could. Oh, it was like. Oh no, okay, I know what it was.
Right.
It's like
so,
it's.
you.
Gosh, it was awesome.
You know, गीता कुरान जिस पे भी हाथ रख के आप बात करना चाहते हो आप कर सकते हो बताओ शिद्दत से बताओ how many of you have sometimes at some point of time told a story like that सच का सामना कुछ ही लोग कर पाते हैं जिंदगी में और ये वो है right okay let's go forward so when it comes to telling the right story or the right narrative I often humbly invite people to think on these 2 points and tell me how this applies to you as well. Number one is, are you telling the right story? कि protagonist की बहुत सी story हो सकती है. I can be a loner, I can be the lover, I can be the leader, I can be the follower. Choice is, do I know what choice of story I'm making? And it's not just about finding the right story. It's also about telling the story right. It's not only about having the right story, it's also about telling the story right. And because it's your story, that can't be going wrong at all. Let's go forward. I want to share with you the ideal narrative structure. You know, when I work with a lot of CEOs and I work with business leaders, a lot of time when I tell them, tell me something about yourself, they'll be like, number one, fast track person in the company, highest sales ever, largest team I manage, right? A lot of time, a lot of them focus on telling their successes very well, which is gorgeous. But I humbly ask people to choose a story and a narrative where there is also struggle. Because if you don't show the contrast between the two, then is your solution really needed? Because I have not made someone see the struggle. Now there are some people who come to me and they're like, Kanika, what if I didn't get success? But mehnat bahut ki thi maine. You know, I really tried very hard and that's the story I want to tell. And I often tell them to think about this. Go right ahead. But do you know the purpose of your story? Through your story, are you trying to sell resilience? That no matter what happened till the end, I was standing ground? Or do you want to sell a story where you want somebody to bet on you and say, I want to choose Kanika because she's made a difference before and after. The larger the stark the difference, better the story. Bigger the gap, better the story. So choose it again very wisely. Let's go forward. Now let me give you some format as to how stories can be told better. While there are multiple ways of doing it and maybe 25 minutes can't do justice, I picked up just one format of how a great story can be told. So ladies and gentlemen and others, I am going to tell you a story. If I said this to my boss, what is he going to say? Come to the point. Baad mein batana. Huh? Come later. Versus if I tell you that, do you know that in 2013, JP Morgan Chase was chasing the highest number ever? Now in both cases, I have told you a story. But in the second one, I haven't patronized by telling you that I'm going to now tell you a story also. Understand the difference? And hence, when you want to give somebody a narrative, it's a great idea to probably begin with what we call as a time marker, right? Then there's also the location marker. You know, where did it happen and when did it happen? Once you've done that, you look at the next element. Every good story, especially business context story, research says should not have more than 3 characters. It's like a juggler with balls in their hand. If you juggle with too many characters, one of them is going to drop on their head, right? So just 2 or 3 formed characters. Going forward, this is a tricky one. These 3 characters have to have a conversation happening between them. There has to be a conspiracy, there has to be something transpiring, and bigger the conflict, better the story. Boy, girl fell in love, father said, ja beta जी ले अपनी ज़िंदगी, is not a story. DDL से कभी नहीं बनती उस story पे. Crow wanted to have water, went to water, had water. Doesn't call for a story. जब तक पानी कम नहीं होगा, conflict नहीं होगा, पत्थर नहीं फेंकने पड़ेंगे, तब तक story नहीं होती. So these three protagonists that you have in your story need to have a conflict between them. Conflict of ideas, conflict of decision making, high stakes, but bigger the conflict, better the story. And the last one, of course, is that it needs to have a business case. Otherwise, there's really no point telling a story. And that is the reason sometimes Mahabharata stories don't work in the business context. Because people are like, people find it extremely difficult to correlate a Mahabharata to the organization. Make sense? I'm often asked, Kanika, what kind of stories can I tell? So I have a formula that I give them, and this is the simple formula. It's called OOO. नहीं वो वाला ओह नहीं है ये, okay? And this is also not what you put on your email IDs out of office वाला OOO भी नहीं है ये, okay? This is OOO because this stands for I can tell my own stories, yeah? The other stories that I can tell are other story, people around me, my paraphernalia, my vicinity. And the last kind of stories that I can actually tell are outsider stories. Steve Jobs stories, Indira Nooyi stories. Now, I don't know about you, but a lot of times people come to me and they're like, Kanika, किताबें तो पढ़नी बंद कर दी, Instagram ही नहीं खत्म हो रहा मेरा. So I don't read any books. I have no Indira Nooyi story and I have no Steve Jobs story, and quite frankly, I don't even know what's happening in the world. So this is my humble submission to them always. You see, when Kanika stands in flesh and blood, and maybe a little bit of fat, right? Your ability to relate with me is so much more than your ability to relate with Indira Nooyi. I can tell you great stories about Michael Phelps and Usain Bolt, and you can get hugely inspired by that, but it may not translate into action and result because it's so far away. And that's why the greatest stories are not about Indira Nooyi and outsiders and Steve Jobs. The greatest stories are my own, your own, and together our stories are probably the most powerful stories to tell. Which star is catching your attention? Which star is catching your attention? Which one? Center one? इतने में से लोगों ने सेंटर भी ढूंढ लिया है, आप देख रहे हो? There are some engineers in the room, okay? And I often say this, and I hope you don't mind me saying this. India is a very large country. Our organization strengths run into thousands, 5,000, 8,000, 1 lakh employees. And a myriad of stars in an organization, everybody is 19-20 only. Make sense? Right? So you're literally largely working with a galaxy of stars all around yourself. And you are one of the many stars that actually exist. Unless you choose to be this star. Unless out of the multiple galaxies of stars out there, when you go for an interview process, there are going to be 10, 15 people, applying for the same job. Right? All stars. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made it to the final cut into that interview. But how do you stand out? How do you become the red star? Acha star banna nahi hai, udna bhi hai. Right? So you don't just want to be the star, you also want to be the wandering star or the floating star who floats forever. The choice is, how do you differentiate? How do you go diverse actually? We are also the partners for this conference. So how do you go diverse from a stars of galaxy of people really around you? Let's flip the script and tell me, we've spent about 22 minutes with each other so far. I'm going to invite your participation and you'll tell me how do you want to script the flip when it comes to narrative and storytelling. Number one, storytelling is science. Can you reframe this for me? Storytelling is even better if I call it, it's a performative art. Actually, even leadership is a performative art. Let's go to the next one. Storytelling is a marathon. Sahi hai? What do you think? It's he says it's a trek. Okay. He says marathon the zameen pe, it's like a Humpty Dumpty trek. No, only I am the Humpty Dumpty in this conference hall right now. Huh? So great storytelling is a sprint. Great storytelling is a sprint. वो कहते हैं ना, कहानी लंबी या छोटी नहीं होती, अच्छी या बुरी होती है. कहानी लंबी या छोटी नहीं होती, अच्छी या बुरी होती है. और भैया, बुरी कहानी बहुत लंबी लगती है. बाहुबली के 2 पार्ट्स हैं, 3 घंटा इधर और 3 घंटा उधर. But it still works. Let's go to the next one. Storytelling, storyteller paints the story colorful. Can you flip the script? Story, what does a storyteller do? Huh? Storyteller paints the picture contrast. The starker the contrast, the before and after, now and then, rich, poor, Cinderella before and Cinderella later, better the story. पापा की परियों की स्टोरी बन नहीं रही है आजकल क्योंकि स्टार्टलिंग हो रहा है डिफरेंस. आप समझ रहे हैं? भावनाओं को समझो, बहुत गहराई है इसमें. ओके, नेक्स्ट वन, मेक द स्टोरी विजिबल. वो कह रहा इमेजिनरी कर दो इसको, है ना? इमेजिनेशन में हमारे नंबर हो गए. नहीं नहीं नहीं, स्टोरी हैज टू बी इनविजिबल. यू आर नॉट अ स्टोरी टेलर. हेलो, यू आर अ चेंज मेकर. और अगर आपकी कहानी के एंड में लोगों को सिर्फ आपकी कहानी ही नजर आ गई तो आपका पॉइंट मिसिंग चला गया ना. स्टोरी को पॉइंट के लिए बताया था ना. स्टोरी टेलिंग वॉज द एजेंडा, द नैरेटिव वॉज इंपॉर्टेंट, द फ्यूचर फॉरवर्डेडनेस. सो यू हैव टू स्पीक इन अ वे दैट योर स्टोरी बिकम्स जस्ट अनदर पॉइंट. योर पॉइंट इज द मेन पॉइंट. लेट्स गो फॉरवर्ड. स्टोरीज आर शेप्ड बाय पीपल. हाँ, पीपल आर शेप्ड बाय स्टोरीज. पापा कहते थे, अंकल ने ये बताया था, बड़े बुजुर्ग ये कहते हैं. People are largely shaped by stories we hear. Even so, when you're in an organization and new intern comes and the old guy in the team says, यहाँ ज़्यादा काम करने की ज़रूरत होती है नहीं, होता कुछ नहीं है इधर, है ना? ज़्यादा मत कुछको, जितना काम दिया उतना ही करो, ज़्यादा हीरो बनने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. And that story now has shaped the new intern. Yeah? Let's go forward. This is my last bit I want to leave all of you with, which is when you take a DNA and you slice the DNA and you take away a little bit of my hair or my bone or my teeth, it's going to give you a representation of my entire being. A little part of DNA can reveal my entire fabric of my entire DNA, right? Now, a lot of times these little stories that we tell from our journey in life are very representative of how people will understand the entire fabric of my character. और आप मानो या ना मानो, जज तो आपको लोग वैसे भी पीठ पीछे कर ही रहे हैं. So either you get designed by their story or you either tell your own. And before I leave, I want to leave you with this last thought. Your global CEO has come to India and you are in their car from the airport till the office. You have 10 minutes. What will you talk about? Will you talk about humidity in India? Cows on the road? Talk about your boss and bitch a little bit? धीमे से? Or talk about asking for a promotion? Maybe a better usage is tell the right story, because the story that you tell in Mumbai should be strong enough that when the leader goes back to California, one vivid day, that story goes back to their mind. Great stories are told, greatest stories are often told by others. On that note, that's the end of my time. Thank you so much for your time today. My name is Kanika Tewari. Thank you for being such an obvious guy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your wonderful session. Please wait back. I would like to call upon stage Miss Mansi Gandhi, Head L&D and Talent Management at National Stock Exchange of India Limited, to do the honors. Can we have a big round of applause?